In this video, I'm going to show you how you can import question banks from publishers directly into Canvas. There's a couple of different ways from the publisher website that you can get to the question banks. Some publishers have tools that will generate tests, and you can create the tests in their programs, and then you can export them in several of the different learning management systems. Typically Canvas is not listed in that list. However, the WebCT option should work just fine. These files that it creates are what's considered a QTI zip file. So you'll see here in my folder here, I have two of these type of files, and they have to be specially formatted zip files. So if I'm going to open up this first one here, and the one way that you can tell it's formatted properly if it has this IMS manifest.xml file. If it has that, you're good to go. You'll be able to import this into Canvas. However, if I look into the second one, you'll notice that I don't have that IMS XML file. So this is not going to import into Canvas. But I can click into this folder, and now I see that there's another zip file. So if I click on that, I'll notice now that there's a zip file for every chapter. So if I have a zip file like this, I want to make sure that I extract the files, and then I'll have to, oops, I've already did this. And then I can import each one of these individually into Canvas. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're working with these type of files. So I'm going to go back. Actually, I'm going to just minimize this. So now we're back in Canvas, and I'm going to go to Settings, and I'm going to import content into this course. This brings up the import screen, and I'm going to select the QTI option, and I'm going to go find that zip file that I showed you earlier. And I'm going to select the file, and then I'm just going to click import. And this is going to bring up the import process. It's very similar to when you copy content from one Canvas course to another. So again, we'll have to wait for the job to get queued. It starts importing, and once it's imported, then we can go check it out in the quiz tool. You'll notice that it then changes to a running. One thing too to point out is that you can move away from this page at any time and it'll still import. Once it's completed, you'll see this little completed tag. So let's go to quizzes and check this out. Since I don't have any quizzes in this course, the quiz tool is grayed out in the left navigation. Okay, so you'll notice that it imported several quizzes with the title unnamed, which is not helpful. Let's go over to the question banks and see what we got over here. So let's click Manage Question Banks. So again, it doesn't do a very good job sometimes of giving you detailed titles with your question banks, and sometimes with your questions as well. This one actually did quite well with the question titles. You'll see that it's got the chapter, the title of the chapter, and what type of question it is. This is actually an essay question. If we scroll down further, we'll see now it says it's an MC question. So this is really helpful. What we would need to do in this case is to rename these question banks. So instead of having a whole bunch of imported questions, we can change this to Chapter 16. And it doesn't show here, but when you go back out, it updates. So we'd go to the next one and do the same thing. And you would just continue to do this. So I'm going to actually pause the video. Okay, so I've changed a couple more of the titles just so that we can see what we're looking at here. So now I know which chapter each one of these belongs to. And there's nothing to say that you couldn't organize them in a different way. So for example, if you want to organize them by the type of questions they are, the content that they cover, you could absolutely name your question banks that way as well. So if I go into one of these question banks, I noted earlier that some of these questions were essay questions. So you might want to organize these essay questions into separate groups so that you know, for example, that when you go into Chapter 10, they're all multiple choice. So what we could do is move multiple questions, and we'll see the ones that have the ES next to them, and we'll select those. So we're going to select all of those. It looks like there's just 3. And they look like they're all at the top, so that's good. We won't have to deal with that. They should all show at the top, which is good. And then we'll just scroll down, and we can choose, we can choose to create a new bank. So I'm going to name this one Chapter 10 Essay Questions. And we'll just move those questions into that bank. So now they're not in this bank anymore, and they're in their own separate bank. That keeps it organized so that we know what we got. So you'd want to continue that with each chapter if that was important to you. We can also, let me go into Chapter 11 here. We can also move an individual question. So let's say we were going to try and organize things by the content. So we can read the question text and kind of get an idea of what that question's about, and we can move that individual question. Again, we can choose to put it in a different bank or create a new bank, and we can also, with this option, keep a copy here as well. So this is just something to think about as well. You can do that. So that's organizing your banks and importing them. Let's go back out to the quizzes and talk about some of the management features that you'll want to do here. Now with the imported quizzes, depending on how you want your quizzes organized, you could use these quizzes. However, it's going to be really difficult to manage the questions in the quiz. So we'll need to switch over to the question tab, and we can see this is the Chapter 5. So we can come back in here and name this Chapter 5 quiz. The thing that you're going to notice here is that all of the questions that were in that bank are in this quiz. So, I mean, you can come through here and read the question text, and you can decide whether or not you want that question in the quiz or not. You could do that, or if you're wanting to randomize, you can scroll all the way to the bottom and create a question group, and you just say MC questions, and you're going to pick 10 of these at 1 point each to be in the quiz. So I'm going to create the group, and I can click and drag questions into the group, and I'm going to have to do this one by one, unfortunately. So you would have to do that for every question you wanted in that group. And you can create multiple groups in a quiz, so that's one way of dealing with that. And you'll notice I still haven't gotten enough questions in there to be at my count, so I need to make sure that I have at least the 10 questions in there. So I'm going to add a couple more in here. Obviously, the more you put in there, the more it's going to randomize as well. So that's one way of dealing with that. Another thing that you can do is just delete this quiz. So if I'm gonna go back up, not even gonna save my changes here because I'm just deciding, you know what, this is gonna be too much of a hassle. I'm just gonna delete these quizzes. This won't affect what you've got in the banks, so you can go ahead and delete those. And you could go through that process and delete them, and then create your own quizzes. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new quiz, and we're gonna hop over to the options for adding questions. Now you can create questions in quizzes, however I don't recommend that because they automatically get filed in a bank called unfiled questions. It's not really good for organization. The option that works best here is the find questions. So here we can go out and find those questions that we just imported. So for example, here's the chapter 10. I can select all these questions. Now if the bank has got a lot of questions in it, you might notice that it has this more questions. And you'll notice that you're going to have to scroll back up and select them again, scroll back down, hit that again. You may have to do this a couple of times before all of the questions are selected. So now we've gotten to the bottom. The key to making this work is to create your group here. So when you create your group here, you can choose again how many questions are going to be on the quiz and how many points they're going to be worth. And this creates the group. And then when you click add the questions, it automatically creates that group based on how you wanted it. So you're not having to click and drag each question into the group. Once you've got the questions all added to the quiz, just make sure you give it a title, and then you can switch over to the settings tab and just make sure that all of the settings are what you want. Keep in mind that the default results for students to see after they take a quiz is to let them see their quiz responses and then to let them see the correct answers. I recommend to check the only once after each attempt. This allows the students to see the feedback once, immediately after they take a quiz. And then you'll also want to make sure you have a due date set, and you can set availability dates as well. And you'll just want to make sure that you save. And if you haven't published it yet, you want to make sure that it's you do the save and publish.